It is awesome that you are here. It's awesome you're able to make it. And we are super excited to talk all about Zereth Mortis and all the other fun things coming in 9.2.
Absolutely.
Yeah, welcome back. The last time we had you on the show was actually from the floor of PAX East 2018 when BFA was spinning up. So it's been a minute. So welcome back.
That was the before times, as I call it. Yeah, it's definitely been a minute.
It's been a while, yeah.
Yeah, like at an event where there was people there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now we're in the Zoom world.
We are. We're now in the Zoom world for sure. Well, I mean, I don't want to delay too much. Let's start diving into some of the stuff we have to chat about. I first want to sort of set a tone for what we're getting into right here. A lot of this patch, presumably, less content that's going to be coming out, was worked on from home / with pandemic affecting stuff, as you sort of mentioned the before times. When it comes to Shadowlands and getting this new zone add to the patch, how did the pandemic sort of affect that plan and affect the team at getting the product out for that?
Right. Yeah, that was definitely a curveball that none of us were really expecting. Obviously, the pandemic had a significant impact on the launch of Shadowlands, right? We actually had to delay the release of it even after we had announced the date. And then that, continued to have knock-on effects with our development of all of our future updates. As you saw, some of our updates haven't come as quickly as the community would want them to. We also aren't happy with that cadence. That's something that we're always looking to get content in our players' hands as quickly as we can. But we're also trying to balance, the health of our team with the quality of our game. And that's just kind of something that has impacted us. In terms of your first part of that question, and the story of Shadowlands, the development of it, going to Korthia and then leading into the new zone that we're introducing in Eternity's End, Zereth Mortis. That's always been the plan. Fun facts, like there's always been kind of Easter eggs, although I'm telling you it's not Easter eggs anymore. like in the Arbiter's room, if you check that out at the beginning of the Shadowlands launch, there's a gate that's in that room that looks a little bit different than the rest of them. And as you notice, as we go into Zereth Mortis, there's connections there. So this has always been the plan, the story we've been wanting to tell, the content we wanted to develop, and the road's been a bit bumpier than we would have liked, but we're trying to get to the destination.
Awesome. So now obviously there's a lot of story to be told in Eternity's End and kind of wrapping up this final chapter of the Shadowlands. We don't really want to get into story beats and story stuff, so we're going to leave that off the table for tonight. But there's some stuff that we do know about what we're going to be doing in Zereth Mortis that we want to talk about a little bit. One thing that was mentioned at the outset, like as a content update was debuted, was that legendary crafting was going to be focused around materials that we get out of Zereth Mortis. So I wanted to just to know like an overview of kind of what that system looks like how do we get these materials, and how long do you think it's going to take for the average player to get their first legendary to max rank? Are we going to need those rank 4s or rank 6s to get started? Are we going to need Soul Ash, Soul Cinders to, make a brand new legendary slot and then rank it all the way up to 8? Or, what's kind of the thought process for how players are going to go through that?
Yeah, totally. So with the updates that we're introducing in Eternity's End, there will be a new rank of legendary. There will be essentially a 7th rank item that is introduced with a new optional reagent. And to upgrade that, you'll need, at least the name of it right now is Cosmic Flux. So that new currency that you're going to earn, that's something that we've actually talked about a lot and have been looking to use it in different ways. If you're familiar with like Echoes of Nyalotha, that's kind of the blueprint for what we're trying to achieve with that currency, as well as the different mechanisms that you might use it for. So lots of different activities will give you this currency, from raids to Mythic Plus to some of the outdoor content. You'll even earn it in Torghast. So in terms of your question of previous items, yes, you'll still need to kind of create and craft and get the Soul Ash and Cinders. But once you get to the most recent content and ranks, you'll use this new currency. We're also using that for something called the Creation Catalyst, which is something that we're actually really excited about, where this is something where players will be able to craft their set items using items that they've earned through different pieces of content and using this cosmic flux stuff. So that's something that will not be there right at launch, similar to kind of what we were talking about with Echoes of Nyalotha and kind of how it played a role in the corruption system. That wasn't something that was there right away. We feel like there should still be opportunities for players to earn that gear through, doing normal content like Mythic Plus and raids. But there's certain items or certain elements of player power where we feel like there's probably a delta of power where if you don't get the thing that will, make your character certain increase better, it can get really frustrating to feel like there's, to be at the whims of RNG there, right? And this is an opportunity for us to really like cut the tail off of that bad luck that some players might experience. So that was something that we wanted to launch right away with Eternity's End, which is really, points to a larger philosophy shift that you might have seen some changes in 915 that kind of were along these lines. And we really wanted to take those ideas and those philosophies and carry them forward into Eternity's End and future updates to really, represent like, yes, look, here are the things that you can earn. This is the way that you'll be able to catch up. Or if you have a new alt, this is something that character will be able to take advantage of. So this is a much larger system that this will be one of the elements that it plays into.
So with this, the cosmic, I missed the second part of the device that we use to create tier items.
The creation catalyst
uses
cosmic flux.
Oh my goodness, the CC. So with the creation catalyst,
write it down.
I got it. So
there's other things too in the zone. There's all kinds of Forge of Afterlives. There's lots of words. It's hard to keep them all straight.
So with the creation catalyst, this is like if an item dropped from the end of run from a Mythic Plus dungeon, I could take that item to this creation catalyst, provided it was an item that lined up with a tier set slot, and upgrade it to a tier set piece. There's the concept behind that.
Yeah. And something that we were trying to be really cognizant of there is when you do upgrade items into tier items, they will have static stats. We didn't want you to be in a position where you were trying to fish for the right item to get the right stat combination. So once you get the set item will be the same thing no matter what.
And can they roll tertiaries like our speed and our, avoidance and all that kind of fun stuff? Because people are going to be rolling them over and over again to try and get those.
That's a great point. We have, learned our lesson with, I believe, some of the pearls and the Nashtar updates. Yes. Benthic armor, thank you. I don't know off the top of my head, but I'm going to go on a limb and say that's not something we would want people to feel like they need to do.
Okay, great. That's good to know. I as far as tier sets go, how many tier set pieces are there? We know we have 2 set and 4 set based off of leak stuff that's starting to sort of pour out from data mining. But how many actual pieces of gear are there in a tier set?
There's 5.
5. All right. So you got sort of like one swappable spot kind of concept going there.
Yeah, totally.
Great. That's good to know. And when it comes to the actual tier set bonuses themselves, I've always enjoyed tier sets that really sort of push players to adapt a little bit the way they play the game based off of whether or not they're wearing a 2 set, 4 set, or not wearing those set bonuses at all. Is that something that we're going to be looking for coming into these tier sets and these bonuses with the return of tier set bonuses? It kind of feels like a really exciting time for a lot of players. It's just, is it going to really dynamically change up the way they play a bit?
Yeah, that's totally the goal. As you've seen with previous tier sets, that's something that we want players to look at that set and then feel like they need to change their gameplay in some way, shape, or form, change their rotation maybe to fully take advantage of that. We feel like that's an interesting organic way to kind of change up your gameplay patch over patch so that you're not, your moment-to-moment gameplay isn't the exact same over the course of the expansion. So this feels like a great opportunity to kind of re-inject that. So that is absolutely still the goal. And as you mentioned, a lot of these set bonuses are actually already they're in the patch, which players haven't seen yet.
Yeah.
However, as you mentioned, data mining is starting. And one of our goals is always to try to get that stuff up on the PTR as quickly as we can so that people can check it out. They can test it. They can give us feedback on some of those set bonuses. And we're always looking to make changes based off of that.
Well, tier sets
So
are
just
Go
a
ahead,
just
go
a
ahead.
point of clarification about the bonuses themselves. They are per spec, yes. So like each spec has a unique 2 and 4 set bonus,
Mhm.
and it's the same bonus regardless of which activity you're doing. It's even if you
Yes.
get the pieces from PvP, it doesn't flex to some
Correct.
PvP effect.
Correct. The
It's
set is the set, and it will always have the same bonuses no matter the activity that you earn them from. It'll work similar to the previous sets that you've seen, where if you swap specs, the bonuses will swap with you, all that jazz.
Does it work in every zone? I'm just putting it out there of back from the Azerite armor days and from the other stuff of some particular bonuses only work in some areas and
Yeah,
that kind of
not
thing?
like not like Shards of Domination.
No. Right.
These bonuses will work everywhere.
Okay, great, good to know. That's a good one.
And so one thing, it's been a while since we've seen traditional class-based set items, set pieces, and bonuses. When we used to get them routinely, we used to have tokens that would drop that would be for 3 or 4 different classes,
Right.
and we used to have the option to master loot them out. Which was really useful if you had, say, like 1 demon hunter in the raid and nobody could ever get a demon hunter set item to drop from personal loot. You could flip the boss, get some tokens, and then get that set piece taken care of. Has there been any thought or discussion about like, oh, you know what? If we have sets, then tokens are kind of a nice option.
Right.
Is there some thought about maybe the future of master loot in a world where set items are back?
I guess 2 parts of that question. As far as the tokens go, I guess just getting into a little more details about what it'll look like. So like when the raid first opens, set items will drop from the raid. You'll kill the boss, you'll loot the corpse, you will take the item from the boss's corpse, equip it. Yay.
Right.
Other activities will have them available through the Great Vault. Part of the goal there was, as we saw with Shards of Domination, one of the things we were trying to achieve with that was to give raids a unique, benefit, something that is exciting about raids of like, okay, cool, I'm going to do raids because I want my Shards of Domination. With these sets, we recognized we can't just give sets to the raid, but we do still want the raiding player base to feel like they have an advantage when it comes to acquiring their sets. At least early on. And then some period into the patch will likely be tied to, some amount of content that you've completed. You'll unlock the creation catalyst, at which point everyone can just start to create set items. And then any item that can become a set item is essentially a token at that point. So that's kind of the idea that we're going for there. And then you said the M word. That's not something, so, we recognize personal loot has problems, both for the players at the high end, as well as people that are just kind of casually running dungeons. We recognize it's not perfect. Philosophically, making changes to something like how our loot rules work is something that we wouldn't do in a patch. That's something that we'd really want to revisit, like on an expansion boundary.
Right. Now, you touched on something there that also I wanted to bring up as part of this chat, which was, the feeling of unique or like really cool, powerful loot out of the raid. Traditionally, set items have kind of served that purpose. They've been sort of a thing to chase and collect out of a raid, which is motivation to log in and, join your guild and run the raid on a week in, week out basis.
Yeah.
Now, I feel like in Castle Nathria, we saw like not a lot of really super desirable like raid specific loot. In Sanctum, we've seen a lot of it, maybe too much to the point where people feel like they can't catch up on another character or something, or they took a break or they want to switch classes. Well, I don't have my sockets, I don't have my shards, I don't have my bonus, I can't compete, I don't want to do this. What's kind of the philosophy for Sepulcher in terms of like making cool stuff that raiders want to chase without leaving people out in the cold if they want to switch characters or take a break? That's got to be a really tough balancing act.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, that's something that, like you mentioned, or like we talked about earlier, there's kind of that delta between, if you don't have like the bracers that you want, like you're probably not going to be feeling like that you're at a huge disadvantage. That's something that you want, but not as big of a deal. Something as large as like a set and a set bonus is something that we really want players to feel like they have a path to catch up to other players, which is where we think the Creation Catalyst is going to do a lot of the heavy lifting there. And in terms of, like new unique loot, absolutely. That's something that we think is really cool. Like the sword off of Kel'Thuzad and the Sylvanas off a Quiver, really unique loot like that. We're going to continue to kind of create for the Sepulcher. But there won't be a Shards of Domination like system in the Sepulcher, which we think is a big part of what was really driving that feeling that you're thinking about. And yeah, I mean, we're always trying to strike the balance there. Like you said, there's we'd rather live in the world where people are excited to do raids and there's things that they are looking to chase, not just in raids, but other activities as well. And it's easy to miss the mark there. Like, thinking back to BFA, like, my guild killed Cahoon and we were like, do we actually need to kill this anymore? Which is, kind of something that you always want there to be something exciting to chase for the player. And we're just trying to, find the balance to strike there.
Right. I mean, I'm just to kind of frame it from my perspective, like I'm a raid leader and I run the raid group and the schedule, and I want to have a place for people to raid, but I want them to be excited to log in. So I like having stuff seated in the raid that people want to fish for, collect, just get all this cool loot, get the cosmetic drops or whatever. So that's that's a big driver for people that I play with in terms of breathing life into a raid 4, 5, 6 months into a season.
Yeah, and I think a lot of some of the feedback we hear is also when there aren't similarly unique and exciting things to chase in other activities. I think that's something that we're always looking at is like, okay, cool. What's the great thing for PvP? What's the great thing for Mythic Plus? What's the great thing for raids? Making sure that there's always something exciting for people. And we always say it's, if you hear the PvPers saying like, the Raiders have got it really good this patch, and then in the same patch, the Raiders are like, the PvPers have got it really good. Like, okay, cool. That's a better place to be.
Right. If everybody's equally unhappy, then that's
everyone's jealous of each other. Right?
Exactly.
As a longtime raid leader, that's always my any kind of guild policy or dispute. If everybody's equally unhappy, then we're doing something right.
That's not how I would phrase it, but all right, I got you.
While we're chatting about loot, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Great Vault.
Sure, yeah.
How has the team sort of felt the Great Vault has done this expansion? Like, do you like the mechanic? Is the team, happy with it?
Yeah, I would say overall successful. Certainly it's a big improvement from, the systems that we had in place for BFA, where there was just the chest and you loot it and you get what you get.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're always looking to improve that. One of the cool things with the Eternity's End update is, set items can drop in the Great Vault, which is going to be pretty cool. And we're, like we mentioned, introducing the Creation Catalyst. Something that we think we can for sure improve is, we always talk about, when your reset rolls around, whatever region you're in, and you open the Great Vault, like it should feel like Christmas. There should always be something exciting for you in there. And, we have the alternate option that is not a loot item, or that is not one of the loot items, that I think there's some stuff, there's some improvements we can make to make sure that there's always something exciting for the players to achieve. But overall, I think the Great Vault has been really successful. There are certainly some aspects to it that we're discussing in terms of, if we bring it forward, what do we do? What do we change? One of the major areas we're talking about, which aligns with a lot of the philosophy discussions we've been talking about, is just when it comes to catch up, when it comes to alts, that feeling like, I've missed 4 weeks of the Great Vault, that really stinks. What can we do to kind of alleviate some of that feeling? So that's definitely an area that we're looking at for future us. But with the Eternity's End update,
Has there been any discussion or thought around allowing the alternate currency you choose to allow you to re-roll your options that you're being presented in the vault? Almost like
that's been discussed.
A thought?
Yeah, that's very much a suggestion that has come up. We've for sure talked about all different means of ways to interact with the vault, right? Like, can I re-roll it? Is it like, I always love the Hearthstone Battlegrounds example of like, can I freeze items? Like,
oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
There's things that we have discussed in terms of how does a player interact with this? Obviously there are, challenges with any direction that we would go there, just in terms of complexity. It's something that we don't want to just keep piling rules on so that it just becomes kind of incomprehensible to the player. So that's definitely something that we're talking about, and just in terms of clarity, in terms of, what are the goals of it, and making sure it always feels rewarding.
Yeah. You mentioned Great Vault tier items dropping from Great Vault. Are we going to see some of the Great Vault options similarly to we did this last raid tier, limited behind killing a certain amount of raid bosses for that actual raid tier?
Yeah, the I don't know what to call them, I guess requirements of each of the tiers or selections will look similar to what you've seen in previous patches.
But like, for example, could we not get final boss loot unless we'd killed final boss out of the Great Vault? Do we know if that's going to be a thing?
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Great. I just wanted to confirm that was still a thing that was existing and continuing. Cool. All right. Let's pivot a little bit to actual raid and raid mechanics and stuff happening in raid.
Sure.
One of the pieces of feedback I raid with a Mythic team, and we went through this growing pains experience of KT. As an example, where the boss itself phase transition based off health, certain abilities didn't happen below certain health pools. Is that something that I know it got addressed later, and it was something that was expressed the team wasn't super happy with? Is there similar mechanics we might be running into in this next raid that maybe something like that we're kind of worried about?
We're always really careful not to, step on the same landmine twice in a row. Like, the example we always talk about, like, which we still discuss internally, is Tomb of Sargeras was frequently called Tomb of Soakgeras. Like, there's lots of soaks. We definitely felt like with Sanctum of Domination, there were a lot of mechanics or a lot of lots of strong word. There were several, more than we would have liked, where it felt like holding your DPS was the correct decision. Some of that just speaks to, the power of cooldowns in our game and how strong they've become over time. And especially as you get more and more coordinated, people can kind of start to strategize around those big windows. So that's something that we've discussed, not only on the not only on the counter side, but also on the combat side. Having, everyone's cooldowns across the entire raid always aligning at the same time is something that has kind of happened over time and has caused, kind of fallout, as it were, for some issues like these. So that's definitely something we are very cognizant of this tier. So that's something that, we'll for sure be on the lookout for.
I mean, I got to say, to Tomb's credit, the soaks that were there, it was where you invented the spikes coming out of the soaks, so you could tell if you're standing in them or not. So that was brilliant. It's like, if it's going to be Tomb of Soakgeras, at least you made soaking really clear. I
call those Kill Jaden spikes to this day.
We still reference them.
The team. I'm like, okay, stand in the Kill Jaden spike, and the people that were playing back then get it, and everybody else is like, why do you call them that?
Yeah, we definitely discuss frequently what can we do to make sure that mechanics are clearly communicated in game, from the visuals to the sound to maybe there's some UI effect on your screen, and creating consistency there is really important. Like you said, like if we're doing it right, you'll see a mechanic and be like, I think I know what that is, right? And creating almost that gameplay language of that visual language where you understand a mechanic just by looking at it before you have to read a tooltip.
Yeah, staying on raid stuff and staying on raid bosses, Sylvanas as an encounter was a fairly epically done encounter, and it was quite long, is the way I would put it. Jason used the word marathon the other day when it came to describing encounters that are 12 to 15 minutes long. How are you feeling about these extended encounters, and are we expecting something similar as far as like that 12 to 15 minute range going into this next raid tier?
So for the record, I'm pretty sure Fear holds the record for
it's up there for sure. I mean, Garrosh was up there too, to be fair. Garrosh was
yes.
You could sit and drink part way through that fight.
Fear literally had a checkpoint. Sorry. So lost my train of thought. Just giggling. Sorry.
Yes.
Anyways, yes, Sylvanas, encounter length, I think, is what you were asking about. Yeah. So with our encounters, we always, we often, especially with end bosses, there's a story that we want to tell. There's an idea we want to get across. And when it comes to Sylvanas, given her history with WoW, there was a whole lot of story to tell. We started at the top of the sanctum. The jailer pulled, or rather, the maw grew to the point where it enveloped Oribos. We then traveled to Oribos and then fought on Oribos. So there's just a lot to get across. And from early on, we knew the duration would be a bit longer than some of our other encounters, which, the bar we have to hold ourselves to is this encounter going to be fun to progress? Is it going to be engaging throughout? And also, are there going to be, peaks and valleys in here, somewhere where you can kind of take a breather as you are progressing and getting ready for the next set? So I would say that's something that we would do if it was required. Like Sylvanas, it felt like a great opportunity to do it. However, while there are some really, really epic encounters in the Sepulcher of the first ones, there won't be anything that runs that long.
Okay, great. Good to know.
Interesting. So one thing you mentioned checkpoints. I want to talk about checkpoints.
That's where I was going to.
When it comes to like a raid zone, I'm getting sort. I mean, now granted, we just got a little flyby in the video, but I'm getting kind of Old War vibes from Sepulcher, the first ones, in terms of just overall aesthetic.
Sure. Okay.
I'm getting the idea that it's kind of like a really expansive space that maybe doesn't play by the rules of physics. Now, we've seen some pretty epic raids. I think that the environments of the raids this expansion have really been kind of exceptionally cool. They feel like really awesome bad guy castles, right? That's what I personally love about raid zones, is when they have that vibe. This is a little bit different, but it seems like it's really big. And like Sanctum, for example, is a huge interior space, and it can take a really long time to come back on night 2 of your raid week and get upstairs so people can start zoning in up there. Can you talk about the thought process for interior of Sepulcher and how we're going to get around? Are we going to have fast travel points? I remember Hellfire Citadel had one of my favorite implementations of that, where you could, talk to Khadgar at the front. And you have a couple different levels you could port to quickly. Are things like that being considered for what seems to be a pretty epic interior space here?
Yeah, totally. Yes. I'm not sure if you had seen this or if it came across in that video, but there are actually flight points, like a flight network within this raid. Cool. That's how large it is. It's extremely large. I think it's one of the largest raids we've ever made in terms of just the sheer size and scale and landmass that it takes up. And that really just kind of pointed back to, like you said, the story that we were trying to tell in here and what's happening within this place. Fun development story. We actually, through our process, we do basically 3D blockouts where it's just all gray squares and boxes. And we originally had a layout that felt like the Sanctum of Domination or Castle Nathria, a very familiar, here's a hallway that leads to a big room that opens up to a couple paths. And as we were talking about the space and exploring it, it just felt like, hey, this is a place where afterlives are created. That scale is nuts. We have to try something totally different, something we haven't done before. So that's kind of how we got to where we are now, where it's okay, there's actually flight paths in here where you fly from one wing to the next. There's a lot of really cool stuff that you can kind of see as you fly along there. And those will unlock as you progress through the raid and then reset as the raid resets. But we have talked about opportunities for, as we do shortcuts and stuff, as you open up, as you've beaten the raid a few times, you might get a shortcut. Those flight points create a really clear and organic way to deliver those shortcuts. So that was something that we thought about from early on, okay, cool. This is actually built-in shortcuts too. That's cool.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah. When it comes to the raid itself, we know that it's having a little bit of a different release where we're actually gating. The word gating is probably a bit harsh, but we're limiting the amount of bosses you can kill in the first week is what's happening. And can you talk a little bit about the decision behind choosing to limit the amount of bosses that we can kill in the first week? And then can we sort of expect a big sort of shift in gameplay or the zone itself in the week where we actually are able to, after defeating that prime encounter, the Anduin encounter basically is I was trying to avoid saying it, but I'm just going to say it. The Anduin encounter to be able to move into the next wing, the next chunk.
Yeah, it's hard not to say his name. Yeah. Right. So I guess a couple parts to that question.
Yeah.
Right. So Anduin, like the Anduin encounter itself, could really be the end boss of almost every other raid we've done, right? Like he's such a big character narratively, the stakes are really high, the encounter itself is super epic with a bunch of phases and all kinds of cool things that kind of unfold through that encounter. So that was something that we wanted to try to give time to breathe. There's also things that we'll learn from Anduin in the aftermath of that encounter that will lead us forward in the story, and also, without getting into spoilers, hopefully make sense as to why it was important in order to progress further in the raid as well. So lots of reasons, but something also to point out is the later raid bosses, the final 3, are actually just available the following week, right? They're available the week of Mythic, which is only a week later. And we felt like the vast majority of players won't actually be affected by, boss 9 being the end boss, that you'd have to be moving at a really quick pace for that to be something that you kind of bump up against. And also this created kind of a unique opportunity for us to try something special, and creating kind of more surprise where some of the players seeing the jailer for the first time across a bunch of different difficulties. So speaking of which, no hard commitments to this, like we're kind of figuring this out as we go, but we've seen a lot of community feedback when they heard about this news, about the release method, and how this is a really cool opportunity for, say, some of the Mythic players to go in blind on some of those last bosses. So there was questions about like, hey, are we going to be testing these on the PTR? So we're still discussing this with a lot of our partner teams. QA obviously will have a very large voice in this discussion, a lot of our engineering partners, but we're talking about what it would take to actually have it so that the players are seeing those last several bosses for the first time on live and not show them at all on the PTR.
Wow, this is exciting. So I've rated since WoW was WoW, like since it started. And Burning Crusade was really the time where I was incredibly dedicated doing a lot. Like that's the first time I was really incredibly dedicated doing content. And there wasn't a lot of PTR and raid testing that happened back in the Burning Crusade days.
Right, yeah.
And I always remembered what it's like to walk up to a boss, first time seeing it, not having watched a video or gone through logs or et cetera, et cetera. So you're bringing back some of that feeling, potentially, if non-committal might happen.
Right, yes.
Who knows,
We're formulating a plan,
yes.
right? Because ultimately, the number one priority is to make sure that the content that we release to the players is high quality, it's bug-free, that they can experience it and have fun. So if we felt like making this decision would negatively impact the majority of our player base's experience, we wouldn't want to do it. But we're discussing, hey, what would it take to do this? How can we gain confidence here?
Yeah, the raid testing period definitely does help find, oh, hey, priests can actually mind control this thing we don't want them to. We should probably
Among
fix
other
that.
things.
Yeah. So yeah, I get that, and I certainly would be excited to get back into a blind boss fight. So that's interesting. That's exciting for me. So
cool. I want to take a step outside of the raid for a few minutes and talk about a feature that I think a lot of people have curiosity about, and it's going to affect everybody regardless of what kind of content that you do if you're playing Eternity's End, which is the Cypher the first ones.
Oh yeah, totally.
This seems to be sort of the like the engine that unlocks Zereth Mortis in terms of stuff to do and power to acquire. Can you just kind of set the stage for us as to like how we progress at the Cypher? Is it like a weekly kind of unlock, like the way Renown is? And do we choose what upgrades unlock when, or is it a set path?
Sure.
And is there any account-wide unlocks built into the system?
Oh boy. How long do we have? There's a lot to dig into with this.
We still have 20 minutes. We got tons of time.
It's pretty big system. I'll try not to talk for too long.
That's fine. I mean, and if there's specifics that you can or don't want to get into, I get it. But just to
totally
frame like what players can expect when they get in there week one and they click this thing and they see the UI with all the unlockables. Like, what does this stuff mean to us?
Right, totally. So I'll try to keep it high level at first, and we can dig into some details if you want. But yes, Cypher of the first ones is a system that drives a lot of our players through the majority of the outdoor content in Zereth Mortis. So it's available week 1. Like as soon as you step foot there, you can gain access to the system. Also, a major goal of ours is for this system to be for people who enjoy the outdoor world, to enjoy the story and exploration. So if you're a person who's only interested in raiding, this system is, you can completely ignore this if you want to, and you won't be missing out on any player power of any kind. This is just something that's for people who are really excited about, kind of the secrets and the things that Zereth Mortis has to unlock. So when it comes to the system itself, there's actually a talent tree. It's a bit more unique than one that we've done in the past, but if you're familiar with like the box of many things, there's a lot of different options in there. And those options can unlock not only power, but also new types of content. You'll earn a currency from doing content that are related to the Cypher, and you can use that currency, which is, you can earn as much of it as you want. There's no like weekly cap or anything like that. As much as you want to play, you can earn more currency. You can spend that currency on the talent tree. A major goal of ours with the Cypher, as well as the development of Zereth Mortis, was we're looking to add a bit more difficulty to the outdoor world. And this is a major kind of mechanism in which we think players will be able to graduate through some of that outdoor content that kind of has an escalating difficulty. So there will definitely be areas of Zereth Mortis that are kind of targeted as a much more challenging section of the zone. And through the Cypher, the first ones, you'll unlock, buffs or different types of interactables in the outdoor world that will help you progress and kind of succeed in that zone. There's a bunch of other stuff. I don't know how long you want me to ramble about this.
No, I mean, that sounds really cool so far. And I think that sort of touches on some of the questions that I was thinking of and that I was hearing from, people that I talked to about WoW. What, in terms of like advancing the Cypher itself, are there like specific quests that you get when you log in at reset, or is there like a bar to fill up every week? Are we getting research style items like Archivist Codex, or
Right.
is it something that we haven't really seen before for one of a system like this in the outdoor world?
Right. It is definitely a mix of things. Similar to what you said, there will be quests that are unlocking, as you're kind of progressing through the campaign quests in Zereth Mortis. There's also, similar to what you've seen in the past, there's like talents that you will research, and they will take a certain amount of time to complete that research. And then that might unlock new elements of the system. I think you mentioned alts at one point in there, or
Yeah, like account-wide unlocks.
yeah, there are for sure account-wide unlocks. Again, similar to a lot of the changes with our most recent 9.15 update. Removing barriers of, hey, this is a thing that if I made an alt, I would be really frustrating to have to do this again. Like I already did this on one of my characters. Why you make me do this again? We're trying to identify barriers like that and remove them where they make sense. Also finding ways to speed up certain progression for your alt characters. So like as an unlock with the Cypher system, you'll unlock at a certain point, you'll unlock a vendor that has all kinds of cool things. But one of those things will be an item that you can use on yourself or mail to your alt that will actually increase the rate that you earn the Cypher currency by like a large amount, like 50% or something.
Oh, cool.
Great.
That sounds really good.
You go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
I
was just going to start rattling other cool things off.
Oh, yeah, sure. Sure, go for it. Yeah, sure.
This is also where you'll get your outdoor gear, right? So gear can be earned through the quests that you will unlock with the Cypher system. You can also find them in treasures, rares. This gear, rattling off item levels is always hard. I think it's like 229 to 249 is where the range that you'll be able to progress through this the Cypher gear. I think 249 is above LFR, slightly below normal, but there are aspects of that gear that will be powering up as you earn more talents in the Cypher talent system, essentially. So maybe there's a cool proc, or there's a cool, mobility aspect on the gear, and those aspects of the items will get stronger as you kind of learn more and progress more through the Cypher system. And for collectors, like I mentioned, there's all kinds of like forges and catalysts and stuff. So there's actually two forges that you will be able to interact with as you progress through the Cypher system. One of which I think they're both called the Synthesis Forge, or they have different names. But essentially, one of them will be a forge where you'll be able to collect essentially different elements of automa pieces or some of these constructs that you're fighting through the zone, and you're able to combine those essentially in a crafting system to make pets. And then a separate forge that you'll be able to find recipes to kind of unlock these frames or these new pets and mounts to make those mounts. So very much a love letter to the collectors out there. There's a bunch of different things that you can collect and chase and go after and kind of progress through that at your own pace in order to kind of craft all the different mounts and all the different pets that there are in Zereth Mortis.
Very cool. Should we expect there to be some sort of large gold sink kind of mount, another Brutosaur type thing that happens this?
I don't know off the top of my head. However, the mounts that you will craft through this system will, you'll do that with resources that you find on Zereth Mortis. So,
okay.
These are things that you're collecting. Maybe some of the rares have a specific item that you might need to craft a specific frog mount or something like that.
Yeah, cool.
One other question about, sorry, Spencer. One other thing about Cypher specifically, you mentioned, you kind of made the comparison to Box of Many Things.
Yes, that's what I want to
One thing that's awesome about Box of Many Things is that the more you invest in the system, the more you unlock, and eventually you unlock everything.
Yeah.
Is the Cypher a thing where we're speccing it out and kind of picking and choosing some things at the expense of others, or do we get everything as long as we invest enough into the system?
Yeah, you will get everything. Eventually, of course, there's certainly agency in terms of what you want to unlock when.
Right, but, so there's choice. I want choice. That's
right. Good. After enough time, you'll have the whole system, but your kind of journey and your path through those unlocks will be unique to whatever your choices are. Something that is actually kind of neat is, like I mentioned, some of the researches have a time element, but there's actually like separate trees to this system, almost like old school talent trees.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll be able to do an unlock per tree. So you'll actually be able to do multiple researches at the same time.
Oh, great.
Oh, cool.
Very fun. And each of those trees would be specified into a particular region or gameplay type, I'm assuming is what they're
gameplay type, like buff related, or there's, like I said, there's a lot of cool stuff here. There's a kind of customizable automa that you'll meet very early on when you get into Zereth Mortis. Its name is Poke Poke, which is a silly name, and I love it. And Poke Poke is a big part of kind of how you interact with Zereth Mortis. So Poke Poke is kind of your almost like Rosetta Stone to this language, and they're the thing that you'll be interacting with to kind of learn more and unlock more things through this system. And Poke itself is also very customizable. You can acquire different looks and customize the way your Pokepo looks, which is just one more element that we want players to be able to kind of express their achievements through their things in game.
Great. I wanted to ask quickly about conduits, because conduit upgrades, we've heard, I believe there will be conduit upgrades happening within Zereth Mortis. Are we going to be going up 2 ranks, similar to what we've done in Season 1, Season 2 on those conduits?
This one is interesting. We're actually, we've heard a lot of community feedback around conduits and how you acquired them in Korthia and how, that item works. From it required a ton of effort to gain one. And then once you use one, it's like targeting your, one of the ones that you probably don't care about. We've made a lot of changes to, some of those issues with 915 to help address some of those problems. And we actually haven't really decided whether we're going to have, the conduit item, conduits will exist and they will have a new tier, but I think you were asking about, the item that was kind of ranking your conduits up over time.
Too. Yep, sure.
Sorry, that was what I was talking about.
You can talk about that.
People. That's something that we heard a lot of feedback about. We think we understand the concerns about, if I want the best conduits I can get, this is the way that, you can achieve that, and that can had several problems or cause some frustration. So we're discussing if that item will exist. But in terms of conduits themselves, there will be new conduits. They'll drop in the raids, Mythic Plus, that are individual conduits that you can take to your forge to upgrade. There's one new tier. And we're just kind of talking about what is the best way to deliver all of that to the player.
Yeah, so there's just going to be one more upgrade for them. Is just confirming. They're just going to go up one more, one additional jump. Okay.
I
have to double check, but I think so.
Okay.
Like a way for maybe a fresh level 60 to get all of their conduits to relevance, quickly, like get them all to 200 or something. Anything like that planned, where instead of I'm coming in and okay, I want to check out Shadowlands, I haven't played before, I bounced off of it, but I bought a 60 boost and I want to check it out, and now I have item level 158 conduits. Anything to anything you could talk about to relieve that kind of pressure?
That's a great question. I don't know off the top of my head if there's a new thing that kind of sets everyone up to a floor, if I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah.
Here, have a minimum collection of this item level. Yeah. I'm not exactly sure if that's going to exist, but that is a good idea.
Great. Just a few season 3 questions, since we're going to be moving into that as well. How are you feeling about how the way Mythic Plus and Valor have worked out in season 2? Is there any notable upcoming changes in season 3, or are we expecting a similar thing with 2 more dungeons in the pool? In the Mythic Plus pool, that is.
Yeah, totally. Overall, really positive. We're generally happy. We feel like the feedback we got from the community is pretty positive. The Mythic Plus rating more clearly kind of creates defined goals of how you can get better at Mythic Plus and get a higher rating. So we're overall happy with that. Same with Valor. We did, I believe, remove the Valor cap, but that is something that with a new season, we would be reintroducing a cap and having it, kind of go up over time up until the point where we would likely or possibly remove it again some duration into the season. But yeah, overall pretty happy with how that's all played out.
With Tazavesh moving into that Mythic Plus pool, I know when I was doing Tazavesh to get my, the neck and anything else, the mount, things like that I wanted to get out of there. It's a great dungeon. I really enjoyed doing it. It had some fairly complex encounters based, not that were more complex than the other Mythic Pluses I was doing. So I can find that Tazavesh might be a little bit intimidating for players on a Mythic Plus Keystone kind of level. Is there any kind of balance / you might be looking at doing? I know Operation Mechagon was something you guys have had history with, so you've done this before. Same thing with Karazhan.
I guess a couple things there. You mentioned Operation Mechagon. We felt like that landed in a really good spot for Mythic Plus, and we're planning to approach Tazavesh in a similar way. And on top of that, Mythic Plus Tazavesh should be on the PTR really quickly, ideally, so that people can kind of jump in and start running those and giving us plenty of time to give feedback on the tuning there. But also, I'm not sure what you guys are running, but Mythic Plus won't be hard modes when you are doing those encounters. It'll be the base versions. I know a lot of people who run Tazavesh at this point just opt into the hard mode right away. So there are some kind of bit of added complexity to some of the encounters there that won't be in the Mythic Plus versions of it. But over time, we've gotten some really powerful tools over the course of Shadowlands development that have helped with our ability to tune content like this, with the introduction of Chromie Time and Threads of Fate, and most recently in 915, Legion Time Walking and the Mage Tower. Those tools have been really, really helpful for us to tune content much more easily. I doubt many people saw this, but there was a pretty funny bug the day the Chains of Domination update came out, where Molten Core was basically like a normal raid. There was an oops there, but that kind of speaks to some of the tools that we've gotten that will help to kind of bring content up to a certain baseline difficulty and make sure that's consistent across the board. Where when I think about some of the dungeons that we added and created Mythic Plus for, say back in Legion, like Cathedral of Eternal Night was really hard when it first came out, and really, really hard in Mythic Plus. And there's a couple things there, right? One is just we don't have the tools that we do now that can really, really help us create consistency with the tuning there across multiple pieces of content. But also, I think a big lesson for us with Mythic Plus in particular, and why we've kind of seen this pattern of here's a mega dungeon, cool, let's split this mega dungeon in half later, is familiarity is a really big part of Mythic Plus, right? Like, even if, Cathedral of Eternal Night was perfectly tuned to be the exact same as all the other dungeons, it would just inherently be harder because you don't know any of the bosses, you don't know the routing, you don't know what the trash does, you don't know what's important to kick. And introducing dungeons as a mega dungeon first gives players time to build that familiarity with the content before it's introduced into the Mythic Plus pool. So we think that's something that has been successful and something that, we're going to try to get in Tazavesh and hopefully get great results.
Great. Yeah, I'm looking forward to checking it out on the PTR for sure. When it comes to Torghast, with, new layers being added, and we know that you are still going to need some of those legendary mats to craft base legendaries to upgrade to the new ones. Are we seeing any updates to Box of Many Things, or is there going to be new stuff to chase inside Torghast for players? As in,
yes. So no updates for the Box of Many Things. There will be some updates to Torghast, like we'll get some new floors. I think they're adding some new creature types in there. And like I mentioned, if people are excited about Torghast and still want to run it to get some of that currency that they need to make their legendaries, Torghast will be an option to do there. So we're really focused on giving players a lot more options to earn that currency to, create their legendaries and create their set items. So Torghast is being updated to help support that goal. But also there's a new, wing of Torghast that we're developing and hopefully will be up on the PTR soon, called the Jailer's Gauntlet. Similar to Twisting Corridors, this is for cosmetics only. And we'll have some cool new swag that you can get in there. And it's more of a like a boss rush mode, right? Like it's less traditional large open floors, lots of different trash. It's more like, all right, let's just slam a bunch of bosses in front of you back to back and see how far you can get.
Awesome.
That's
great.
That's something that we're adding, and it will primarily be for cosmetics, or be for cosmetics.
Yeah, it'll be for cosmetics. So I'm just confirming in there. So all of the legendary crafting materials will drop from Torghast. You'll get something of everything towards crafting legendaries. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Cool. That's neat. That's a quick way to get it. Right now, I enjoy farming it for renown. That's what I've been doing in all the different covenants at the moment. So it's been great. As far as looking ahead, what were some of the lessons the team learned over the course of Shadowlands that they're feeling that they might be used to inform the future design? Is there any big highlights, like a big learn that you guys had?
That's a pretty broad question.
It's a broad question. So yeah, exactly. I'm thinking of what's the one thing that you feel, could be for you personally.
Sure, that's fair.
Are taking away from Shadowlands, going, oh yeah, that's the thing that I want to be sure I'm bringing forward.
I guess I could choose two things.
Sure.
I'm going to choose two things. And again, this is for me. This is my opinion. I think, we've already talked about it a lot, but I think it's really, really important and really, the team feels really strongly to try to kind of get our goals across and, make changes that the player feels have, essentially been removing barriers for people who want to make additional characters, and as well as adding new catch-up for players, just more count-wide things, more things that if a player looks at and says, that's a frustrating thing to have to do the second time, there's a line there, like, yeah, you're gonna have to go earn the gear on your character.
You got to play the game. That's the point. Thing you gotta do.
You got to play the game. But there are certainly things that we feel like, reach a threshold where you're like, why do I have to do this again? And a lot of those changes that you saw in 915 are things that we're trying to take forward into our Eternity's End update that you'll see in Zereth Mortis, that we feel will, really, hopefully create excitement around not only playing the game on maybe one of your characters, but try different characters. One of the best things about, all the different content that we make is playing it on a different class can feel completely different. Like healing a dungeon versus tanking a dungeon versus, DPSing, even range DPS versus melee DPS. Like very different experiences. And learning that again and earning the gear is really exciting. And we're trying to, create excitement there and do as much as we can to incentivize people to check things out. What would be the second one? I said 2. This is something that we're using, or we're kind of dipping our toe in the water with Legion Time Walking. I'm excited to have players be able to play through that content soon, but being able to experience, Legion Mythic Plus and the Mage Tower again, I think is something that is really, really, really cool for just the future of World of Warcraft. I think, like I mentioned, some of the cool new tools that we have at our disposal to kind of tune pieces of content very quickly and accurately is something that's really, really exciting for us. And I think we have some really awesome content that our players loved, and finding new ways to allow players to experience that again is something that I think, I'm hoping we'll see with Legion Time Walking will be successful, and hopefully there's some lessons we can learn from that and kind of take forward.
Well, thank you very much. We are at our limit on time, and I don't want to take up any more of yours. So thank you again. I'm looking forward to the day when we can get together in person again and have a chat and maybe go out to get a drink at some point and chat up more World of Warcraft in some Hilton lobby or Parker Hotel or whatever it is, wherever we end up. So thank you again. I hope that you have an enjoyable weekend, and we really appreciate everything you're doing. I'm looking forward to playing some 9.2.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for having me, and it's always fun. Till next time.
Yeah.
Bye.
All right. Okay, with that, we're going to wrap up episode 488 of The Starting Zone. If you'd like to check out show notes for the episode or leave us a comment on the show, then you can head on over to thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. If you want to contact the show and leave us your feedback, you can email us at thestartingzone@gmail.com or reach out to us on Twitter or join our Discord over at thestartingzone.com/Discord. And Jason, if folks are trying to find you on the internet, where can they do that?
Best place to find me, as always, is over on Twitter. You can find me over there at Shieldwald. Always talking whenever I'm doing in and around WoW and other stuff.
And if you're trying to find me, you can find me on Twitter at Spencer_Downey or over on Twitch at twitch.tv/SpencerHD. And with that, for myself, for Jason, and for Morgan, thanks for listening, and job's done.